I've been thinking a lot about just broadening the definition of what it means to be discoverable. And so literally going beyond the SERPs and thinking about what makes you engage with a brand or remember a brand and search for it later on. So thinking about all the different positive associations that people make, like the reviews, consistent high quality content, trust factors, etc., case studies and stuff, even decent pricing. So broadening your definition of discoverability and focusing more on the brand and the entity itself. Hi, I'm Sukhjinder Singh, and this is SEO in 2026.
Sukhjinder, what's your number one SEO tip for 2026?
It is to say goodbye to rankings and hello to recognition. It's time to appear everywhere.
Goodbye rankings. Okay, so I was saying that rankings change so often that it doesn't really matter. Are we saying that you don't get as much traffic as you used to, so there are other metrics that are more important now? Why are you saying that?
Yeah, it's to be honest, a bit more sensational than I'm used to. I'm used to quite a boring title, so I thought I'd grab some attention. So it's not completely goodbye, I have to say, but it's changing your mindset because we're still quite comfortable with tracking ranking positions and having that as one of our main metrics, and it should definitely be one of the metrics. But I think we should get more comfortable with appearing in different ways and broadening what it means to be discoverable and focusing on, things like brand mentions, entity strengths, your visual content, all the different ways that you're surfaced in the SERPs, and kind of more conversational interactions across platforms. So it's kind of broadening that idea and not getting out of the comfort zone in terms of what's still kind of trackable, which are the kind of top 10 kind of ranking positions, which even now is made a bit more difficult with Google's change to pagination and how tools are picking up beyond position 10. So yeah, it's not a complete goodbye, but keeping our mind open to other ways of tracking brand recognition instead.
So as part of your sensationalist headline, you also said hello recognition. How do you measure recognition?
Yeah, it's good because it's still evolving, right? So we could do manual checks, doing search queries and seeing how we are surfaced and how we are cited across the main kind of forums and platforms related to our industry and our website, right? And then we can also use AI tracking tools or AI tracking add-ons, which are getting developed as we speak. So at the moment, I'm using SEO Monitor with the AI search add-on. I've also got Ahrefs. That add-on's a little bit more pricey, but I'm also looking into LLM refs and other tools. And essentially, we can search for, share of voice, brand visibility, and brand and non-brand traffic. And I think those are good ways to measure them at the moment. And LLM rep is one of the cheaper ways to kind of start tracking AI overviews and ChatGPT, etc.
And how do you tie that back to ROI?
Yeah, so that's the other thing we've got to become comfortable with, because we could track, referral traffic, for example, from these different LLM platforms, which is great. So I've already got those integrated from a year ago, but we can't track basically someone servicing a brand name and then them doing a brand, organic brand search or clicking on a paid ad or social media ad, etc. Right? So it's really tricky. So the best way that I've concluded this at the moment is to focus on, share of voice, brand search, and try to correlate that stuff to activity with doing more citation work with brand related stuff and digital PR, and trying to get more citations and doing more entity optimization as well. So yeah, I haven't got a 100% solution on how to attribute that back to kind of ROI, but I've got a kind of a fuzzy solution that's in the making, and I'm keeping an eye on other people that are doing it as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. It almost reminds me of old-fashioned PR where you're measuring brand uplift, or you're claiming that increased brand awareness resulted from a certain article that appeared in a newspaper. And it doesn't make it incorrect that that piece had a significant impact, but it makes it more challenging to justify your activities to stakeholders within a business. So when you're having these sorts of conversations internally or with clients, what do they say about this, and are they on board with it?
Yeah, absolutely. So like when I've related this to my clients currently, I've referenced back to when we came up with KPIs 2-3 years ago. So my longest client as a freelancer is a big brand, right? For the last 3 years, and coming up to 3 years, they've been with me, right? e-commerce brand, right? And from day one, we tried to come up with some KPIs. And I said, look, this is the best I can do in terms of forecasting how much performance you're going to get from all of this work. And it worked backwards from keywords, basically keyword search volumes in different regions. And I said, look, with SEO, as you know, this is our kind of best guess. And there is some data to back up what we're planning to do, but it's not as trackable as like paid search, for example. And that's always been the case, right? And so I've got those existing conversations that I can build on when these new developments come up, right? If it's a brand new client, then I do have to kind of go back to square one and explain, SEO has always been not fuzzy. We've got metrics, solid metrics that we can track, but ultimately it's not as solid as like a paid search, for example, unless you're willing to invest a lot of resource and cost into, say, connecting a CRM to an analytics tool. And even then, revenue, ROI, lead generation, ROI, et cetera, is still hard to 100% attribute to activity. I can say, look, I've got some case studies that I can show them to say, look, I can correlate, obviously, activity versus, final revenue stuff on their CRM, for example. And you can see the analytics going up and down as well as a result of that. So there is some connection, but this is the best way that we can do it. And I'll give them case studies as well as examples. And look, I'm not the only one that's saying this. We've got other popular brands and SEOs kind of in the same boat.
Are you seeing this across different industry sectors and different countries that maybe direct measurable organic traffic is dwindling significantly? Or are there certain industry sectors that this doesn't apply for?
I haven't actually gone that far down into sectors yet, but I do actually want to do that. That's really interesting. I've looked at broad data. Like, for example, I've got a couple of stats here as well that I'm referencing to clients. So I've got a big spreadsheet of stats I have to go to now to kind of back up what I'm saying. So AI overviews reduced general clicks by 34% year on year in a study from Ahrefs. So between March 2024 and 2025. So a reduction in clicks, increase in impressions, as everyone's kind of looking at recently as well, and a reduction in click-through rate as a result of AI overview. Zero-click searches are up as well in the US by 24%, etc. Industry-wise, I would like to really drill that down because I've got a wide spread of industries to my freelance clients. But I would suspect I've got a lead generation client that sells, arguably, I was going to say boring, but I've said it now. But yeah, it's household appliances, whatever. And then I've got an e-commerce client that sells children's clothes, right? Two vastly different. And the kids' clothes client has got mounds of data on how people are searching just from referral traffic and making purchases. The revenue figures are quite small relatively to organic search and paid search, but there's a distinct increase over the last 12 months, especially in revenue, traffic and revenue from those referral sources. And that's a lot more starker than my lead generation clients. So I could say kind of firsthand or anecdotally, there is a difference, but that is something that is worth drilling into by industry.
So what does this really mean for the role of SEO moving forward? Because you talk about the increasing importance of the role of brand consistency. So I'm imagining that there are going to be entity optimization specialists who look into brand consistency across different platforms. There are obviously going to be technical SEO specialists that look at website health and performance once you're actually on there. I guess there are analytical specialists who help to tie data together and understand user journeys a little bit better and understand what people are doing on different platforms. Does this mean that the SEO role is splintering into different functions and not all SEOs will probably do all roles?
I think so. And I think it's been happening already for the last 10 years as we saw more, featured search results appearing and more paid search in organic search results, amongst organic search results, pushing those below the fold. And, Instagram Reels as well, TikTok, YouTube videos appearing in organic search results as well. So I think we've had to definitely integrate more with the different channels and get clued up on, okay, what makes a good Instagram post? How can we put in keywords? How can we splinter our YouTube videos and create YouTube videos from our popular organic content, FAQs and things like that? But I think this definitely takes that a step further. And I was just talking to someone recently about the new university courses around prompt engineers, AI prompt engineers and kind of things like that related to AI search. And out of all the podcasts and studies that I read and I've seen and listened to and stuff, there's a stark difference between people saying, oh God, yeah, it's the end of these jobs and there's only going to be like 5 jobs now. And the other ones are saying, no, it's going to be fine. It's not going to be that bad. For SEO, I think it's just going to evolve, and it's building upon the helpful content system and EEAT guidelines we've already been following. And also, I think it does require us to think more in terms of strategic marketing terms, like the old school marketers, and being comfortable with just having our brand mentioned across different platforms, but not necessarily tracking whether someone saw that and then did a search through, paid search or organic brand search, whatever, but then just looking at the final traffic and revenue or conversion figures and trying to correlate, oh, we did a bunch of offline PR that month, or we did a bunch of citation work that month. And then, a month or two later, whatever, it's kind of increased. We've had our sessions and revenue increased. There's got to be some connection there. So I think we do have to get more clued up with what makes a good Instagram reel. How can we input keywords? And I've started to process that out and template that out and upskill myself on, how can we convert these popular blogs into YouTube content? And how can we create videos from this? And how can we get, more FAQs, etc. But I personally find that exciting, that evolution, because I've been doing SEO for like over 15 years, and stuff like this, new stuff to learn and stuff, is personally exciting to me. So I think it should be welcomed for sure.
You used the word video quite a few times there. You talked about Instagram Reels. You also mentioned splintering YouTube videos. I would imagine that's breaking it down into shorter form videos. You talked about TikTok videos as well. Why would you say that it's a case that short form video, social content, conversational formats are critical? And where would you say that fits into the average buyer journey?
Yeah, I guess I'd say important might be less urgent than critical, based on the industries and the type of audience as well. So again, referencing my e-commerce client, they tend to consume more of that type of content, whereas some of my other clients that might not be as interesting, for the video format, that might not be appropriate. But then again, I'm not actually sure at the moment, because I'm thinking about A/B testing different types of formats of videos and length for the lead gen one versus the e-commerce client. I think I slightly forgot your original question, but video and how critical it was.
Yeah, understanding where short form video fits into the standard buyer journey.
Simply just because it's being surfaced a lot more in search results that I can see under special features in my ranking reports, and kind of doing manual checks, manual checks across my clients.
So in search results on Google?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But obviously, informational searches as well for the most part. And then relating to products as well. For example, we're doing a few sprints coming up for Black Friday, and then lining up the Christmas stuff as well.
So it's this vertical video form you're talking about being surfaced within search results as well?
Yes. I can't remember exactly the type of videos that are showing up, but they'll be, and it's mostly for the informational search results. And I'm thinking to buying guides that I'm optimizing for currently. So that crosses between the informational and like the promotional product searches. So that's one specific example that was just stuck in my head that I'm trying to kind of figure out how to optimize for that.
Well, I mean, you also talked about taking a blog post and maybe turning that into a video. Then if you did that, I guess how would you go about doing that? And also, once you publish that video, would you incorporate that video within the blog post, maybe underneath the text, and hope that by embedding that video on your site, you're making it more likely that video is also going to be surfaced within the SERP in the future?
Essentially, yeah, because I've seen that work for some competitors. And so the way I'm trying to work it is, I'm currently going through a process of listing our top blog post for my one of my e-commerce brands. And there's one that's consistently top for the last 3 or 4 years. And so what I'm trying to do, it's a good concept. So I'm basically going to figure out how to convert that into a video across the different platforms. So TikTok and Instagram and even YouTube. And I'm trying to figure out what is the ideal length, and also how the video should look. Should it be a combination of a cheap and cheerful, relatively, of animated images and captions, etc., and audio, or do I need an actual human in there? Whatever. So I'm at the stage of trying to figure out what's going to be the most engaging and economical way to create these videos and scale it up. So I've essentially got a little A/B test idea for, like when you see on the BBC website, when they've got latest news videos and they're just essentially animated or, videos with captions on top of them. So that's one version I've got. And the other one is actually trying to encourage people, okay, can we get a couple of people to shoot these? and essentially we'll convert this blog to talking points and pick out the data sources from this blog, and we'll convert that to a video. So yeah, that's as far as I've gone with that. But I'm really confident that that will surface some decent search results.
Okay, and one other word that I'd like to ask you about is you say that the future SEO skill set is part technical strategist and storyteller. Why does an SEO need to be a good storyteller?
I think an experienced SEO, midway to senior, needs to be able to, because I'm thinking about, I do a lot of content ideation, and I didn't necessarily have to do that earlier in my career. I was more of a technical SEO, if you like, international / technical SEO. But I've started to lean more into helpful content and EEAT, and basically what allows us to compete in AI search results as well. And for me, it's been coming up with interesting blog ideas and to encourage engagement, because we know of the engagement metrics to a certain extent can help with rankings as well, as of that kind of Google league. So I'm trying to think about, okay, how can we promote the brand, build our topical authority, and really like tell a story about our brand and engage with the client with, these different content pillars. So trying to think more creatively, and there are specific content marketers that can do that, but it just happens that I'm really quite interested in that as well. And so I think having that skill set would really help with content ideation and encouraging engagement with our supporting content.
Sukhjinder, what's the key takeaway from the tip you shared today?
I didn't actually prepare that in advance, but I've been thinking a lot about just broadening the definition of what it means to be discoverable. And so literally going beyond the SERPs and thinking about what makes you engage with a brand or remember a brand and search for it later on. So thinking about all the different positive associations that people make, like the reviews, consistent high quality content, trust factors, etc., case studies and stuff, even decent pricing. So broadening your definition of discoverability and focusing more on the brand and the entity itself.
Sukhjinder Singh is a freelance SEO consultant at I Do SEO. Find out more over at idoseo.co.uk. Sukhjinder, thanks so much for being part of SEO in 2026.
Cheers, David.
I've been your host, David Bain. Get your copy of SEO in 2026, the book, over at seoin2026.com.